All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Transportation Commission meeting. It is 4:01 p.m. on Wednesday, March 2nd. This is our special meeting. And what I'd like to do is roll call and audio check for our commissioners. So starting with Commissioner Kuhn.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. I'm good.
All right. Welcome. And I do not see Commissioner Spice on the line. He is not here. Commissioner Morley.
Present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kraft.
Here.
Welcome. And it looks like we have Jeff Bauman, Dave Lemke, Lieutenant Hernandez. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay. So before we go into preliminary general business, I'd like to welcome a few folks today. And really excited to say that we have 3 new appointments to the Transportation Commission. Those appointments are I think a couple of those individuals are here today, and I would like to welcome commissioners, newly commissioners, so they'll start next commission meeting. But we have Commissioner Brandon Cruikshank, Joe Koenig, and John Hansen. So welcome to you all. We're so excited to have you join the Transportation Commission. Thank you for your service. And when we go into public comment, I'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself, but I wanted to take this moment to welcome you. All right, so with that, I would like to move into preliminary general business, and this is a call for public comment. So at this time, any member may address the commission on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not on the meeting agenda for this afternoon. Open meeting law prohibits us from discussing or taking action on an item that's not listed on the prepared agenda. However, we can respond to you and ask that that matter be placed on a future agenda. So now is the time to address the commission for any items that are not on the agenda. And I'd love to, don't mind if you don't mind, I'd like to put you on the spot, John Hansen, and introduce yourself, please, as public comment to kick that off.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be a part of the commission, so thanks everybody for letting me be a part of the group. I'm John Hansen. I'm president of Love and Contracting. I've been in Flagstaff since 2003 and an NAU graduate, and I have a background in civil engineering. I worked for a local civil design company for 6 years before coming to Lovin'. So it's a little bit about me, and thank you guys again. I'm excited to be a part of the group.
All right, thank you, John. And Joe Koenig, welcome. Oh. Maybe we can get a chance to get that audio worked out. Do we have, and that take that time, do we have any other members of the public that would like to address the commission? If so, please go ahead.
Shirley, I'll say hi.
Councilmember Shimoni, I didn't see you join, but welcome.
Last minute addition to the group here. Hey everybody, just want to say hi. Thank you all again for your service as always. Looking forward to your meeting today and listening in. And I'm sure I'll probably have a thing or two to say, but I'll try not to take too much airwaves. But yeah, appreciate you all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Right. John, did you get that audio working one last try? Or Joe, excuse me.
Let's see, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Excellent. Thanks. Excited to be a part of the commission. My name is Joe Koenig. I've been in Flagstaff for the past 10 years or so, and I work at W. L. Gore & Associates as a engineer of some sort. So yeah, excited to be a part of it.
Well, welcome, and thank you. Okay, last call, public comment. All right, moving on, approval of minutes. We do not have minutes. However, we have recordings of all of these meetings, which is posted in the agenda. You can find it there, as well as you can contact Jeff Bauman and he can send you that link. So moving into new business, item 2, first item on the agenda is City of Flagstaff. We have our Bicycle Advisory and Pedestrian Advisory Committee appointments and some vacant positions. Jeff, are you ready to introduce these, or Martin?
I am. I'm not sure. Martin is here, but I can do this. We chatted a few minutes ago. So we do have some vacancies and some need for reappointments on both Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, but all of that paperwork is not quite sorted out. So we're gonna do this again in April.
Okay, so move that to April. Then let's move on to item B, which is City of Flagstaff Regional Plan Update. And with that, I would like to welcome Sarah Dechter and Jordan Hollinger to present on the regional plan. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Let me get my screen share up. First, actually. So today we are here at a very early phase of the regional plan update, which I know feels like yesterday for Julie probably, and some other folks who were part of the Citizen Advisory Committee and the whole process of building the regional plan in the past. We are basically going to run you all through a presentation about the regional plan, and then you're going to do an interactive activity that will involve you getting on a website and entering some of your ideas and bringing your quorum together and your feedback in a very different way than just talking at us. And so we are doing this across over 20 commissions, and you guys are only number 2. So we are refining this process as we go. So we would like also at the end your feedback on whether the process is good or not, so that we can make it better for the next commissions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat that is for the commissioners only. So it can also be non-voting commissioners, but anyone on the commission can click on this link, and this is where our interactive activity at the end of the presentation will be. So if you want to pull that up and just make sure that you can log in and be ready for it, I'll put that in the chat early. But with that, I'll get started with the presentation part. Let me see. There's the team stuff. So the Flagstaff Regional Plan 2030 is the current regional plan, and what we are launching on is updating it so that it can go and be sent to voters in 2025. There's always kind of a 20-year time horizon for the regional plan, and so this is tentatively called the Regional Plan 2045. That's the horizon on which we are trying to plan for. So today we'll go over what is the regional plan for people who need some more familiarity with it. What is in the current regional plan, what is being done to update it, and then we'll go through the SWOT analysis. So for those who've been in presentations with me before, you know this is my favorite slide, sometimes the only slide. It is our planning pyramid, and so this diagram describes the different levels of planning that the city does. So we have the regional plan, which is the broadest policy document and the only one besides the city charter that is ratified by voters. And then we have specific plans like the high occupancy housing plan, the Plaza Vieja plan, the Southside plan. We also have a lot of other strategic and master plans that don't have the same legal connection to the regional plan, but they all build off these same land use scenarios and transportation scenarios that are tied to this larger document. And then at the bottom of the triangle, the green section is our code. So the engineering codes, the zoning code, anything else that is a standard for the city that might be applied to development or even to a city project can fall into the green portion of the triangle. So we call this a regional plan, which is very unique in Arizona because it is our city's general plan, and Coconino County adopts it as an area plan. So the boundaries of the regional plan are defined by the Metropolitan Planning Organization Metro Plan. So as much as this is a land use document, it is tied to our transportation geography in a very meaningful way. And then the unique adoption process in the city, we send it to voters. if we're talking about the surrounding county area, the Board of Supervisors is who adopts this document. But we do one document, two decision processes. This is the future growth illustration, which is basically our desired future land uses for the city. And it is the one on which we base our future water consumption and demand trends, our future transportation projections. They are all based on this map, which is an adopted part of the regional plan. So it's very important for all of those different disciplines that we have an integrated planning process that takes them all into account, which is why we're here tonight. The public had specific demands last time we did a plan update. What they wanted the plan to do was to hold our government accountable so that we could make publicly derived policy decisions. They also wanted it to guide our physical and economic development, establish priorities, provide direction so that outside developers and people who are coming in and looking at our community and how to invest in it would have some guidance, and also to encourage predictable decision making. I think the part that this document has struggled the most with is establishing priorities. There are 97 goals and 500 policies, and none of them are prioritized. It's just a lot of things to look at all at once. And we've definitely heard feedback about that from council, from the development community, and from the public saying, well, how are we supposed to know how to make trade-offs with the way this document is currently structured? And that is a big piece of what we will probably be talking about in the update. It includes that generalized land use map that you saw. The current plan also has a robust basis for our transportation modeling. And so MetroPlan uses the modeling data that's underneath that more generalized plan. And so does Water Services. It has a very strong multimodal emphasis. And it also has a foundation for a sustainable water supply for the city. So I'm going to take you through chapter 10, which I think was attached to your packet, which is the transportation chapter. Not to say those other chapters don't have integrated ideas for transportation, because they do, but this is the one specifically we'd like to go through tonight with the commission. So the vision of our transportation chapter is that people get around to where they need to be in an efficient, safe, and manner, and more people ride the bus, their bikes, and walk, reducing emissions and increasing health. That's the real vision of our entire transportation chapter. And it's broken into goals and policies. What you see here on this slide is our table of contents for that chapter. We talk about mobility and access, safe and efficient multimodal environment, the environmental conditions and design considerations, and then we break out information by modes, and we talk about our regional travel needs and freight. The way this is dealt with in the plan is we have a road network illustration. Now, what is required in the plan is a circulation map that shows every road from the collector level and above. That can be difficult because we add new collectors when we develop new areas of town. And so the map includes both the existing collector system and up arterials, of course, and it includes rough future approximations of what transportation systems may look like in areas of future development. The process of looking at this also requires us to consider how we categorize these. The decision was made in 2030 that we didn't want it to be a map that said this is a minor arterial, this is a major collector. And so there's a different schematic here or framework where we talk about roads for regional travel, roads for circulation, and then roads that are access roads. And so the black and blue lines on this map are regional travel for black, circulation blue, and then the orange and yellow are access roads. And they're divided into access roads that have a commercial or industrial environment in their land use, in the land uses that surround them, or yellow ones, which are for residential access, which probably don't have any commercial activity on them other than deliveries and UPS and moving vans and things like that. So now the engineering standards have the adopted functional classification map that provides more detail, and that map and this map were reconciled right after we adopted the regional plan. We made sure that the one in engineering standards matched. We also have a foots map of both the existing and future foots trails. Martinez is right now in the process of actually replacing this map with a series of 5 maps that all come out of the Active Transportation Master Plan, and I'll show you a little bit about that later. The key policies, though they break into those more detailed categories, I would summarize them this way. There are key policies about travel modes, that we need to improve mobility, connectivity, safety, and efficiency for all modes. We should build complete street guidelines and context-sensitive solutions. We need strategies that increase alternative modes of transportation, and we need to provide high-quality, safe, convenient access to our public transportation system that Mountain Lion provides. We also have key policies on regional travel, which I think is the balance, right? We need to both Sorry, someone muted me on accident. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So we also need to provide that connectivity so that the region-wide travel can continue to move through our community. So that includes, of course, passenger rail and air travel as regional and national connections through our community. And then we also have some other policies that are really key. There's ones that connect this land use and transportation connection and talk about how important it is that we're designing within that context and having these discussions within that context. There's also environmental considerations, much like if we were doing a NEPA-based project that had federal funding, or if we were doing a project with ADOT and we had to do the planning for environmental linkages. There's some considerations in the plan to assist us in doing that work. And then also building and sustaining public support for transportation planning and implementation strategies. I think that is one of the really critical ones, and one that I think we've seen a shift on in the last year or two, of how we have that public support coming forward, and people really have been engaged in conversations about transportation and what it means in our community. We definitely felt that that was an important element of success for any transportation program the city and Metro Plan might be pursuing. As I said, currently there is an ongoing city amendment that's proposed to the regional plan by Martinez to coincide with the Active Transportation Master Plan. It does not amend any goals and policies, so the goals and policies would stay the same, but it adds a lot of contextual information to the text of those chapters, especially the bicycle and pedestrian ones. And it replaces that single foots map, because that's not our only bicycle and pedestrian system, with separate maps for sidewalks, bikeways, crossings, foots, and forest access and trailheads. Because our surrounding trail system on National Forest System lands is also a transportation route in and around our city, like the Flagstaff Loop Trail. So how are we going about from where we are now to where we're headed with a plan update? We've broken this process into 4 phases. We are currently in phase 1, and the theme of phase 1 is let's get curious together. Let's try and build a shared understanding of what we know and what we're uncertain about and where we're trying to head in the future. And so we have spent the last 5 months as a team building an online series of webinars called the Regional Snapshots, which you can find on the city's YouTube channel as a playlist. There's 17 of them right now. And there'll be about 24 of them before we're done. And what each of those snapshots is a 15-minute presentation and a 15-minute Q&A. Really short, really succinct. They get at the big topics. We covered transportation back in November, and so you can find those if you're interested at all. And those are really just a chance to feel like we understand and can get our hands around all the stuff we need to know to do a regional plan update. We are also going to be creating some art and excitement. We have a youth activity that will be launching this summer at events like the fair and Juneteenth and Tardiata and a whole bunch of other activities in the community where we're going to have art boxes. That particular part of this process was funded by BPAC. They took some additional strategic planning money that was unspent, carried it over, and they funded an artist educator to create this opportunity to engage in an artistic way with our regional plan visioning. We'll also start having public meetings later this summer or early early fall so that people can gather maybe in a more traditional way they're comfortable with. But we postponed, that was originally supposed to happen a few months ago, but we postponed it because of the COVID surge that was happening at the time. Our next phase, which will start next year, will be more like what I think people think of when they think of the last regional plan update. We'll have scenario planning. We're going to have a collaborative process. I will state clearly that collaborative process does not yet include committee appointments, but we will meet people on the way who may want to be on a committee. Council will appoint a committee as part of phase 3. At the end of phase 2, we should walk out of that process with is a lot of drafts. Here's some ideas we heard from the community. Here's some competing ideas that might have to be considered. Hopefully the collaborative process will point us in the right direction for lots of those. And then the advisory committee will be formed and they will go through all that material and finalize it into a draft plan. So the committee, unlike the last one, which met for 5 years and had a bazillion kinds of turnover, and people like Julie, who sat through all 5 years of it, were heroes to the community, I'll say, or saints, however you want to put it. But hopefully they will only meet for 8 to 10 months. And they will have a ton of work and it will be very organized and they will go from start to finish with a clear goal in mind of producing a draft plan. So we're running that process very differently. I've definitely had people ask, like, can I sign up for a committee? How do I get on a committee? And it's like, why don't you just participate first? The committee assignments will come when we have work for a committee to do. We don't want to have a 5-year committee again for a process like this. And then council will have to adopt this and send it to voters, and the Board of Supervisors will have to adopt it. Figuring out the sequence of that is a task that council will have to have in the next few weeks or next few months. I think will be on the agenda eventually with it. There are a lot of ingredients to the regional plan, and I just put a few up here so you can think. I also love a good picture with planners and sticky notes because that is exactly what my desk looks like every single day. But so this process is just another piece. What we're doing tonight is going to be one of those sticky notes on the desk that we're moving around and trying to understand how to build a plan that can gain consensus. It'll also include over 180 data metrics, part of which the snapshots have started to organize and share with the public. And we hope to have an ongoing transparent process for those who are really the data nerds who want to get in there with me and Jordan and others and really understand the numbers and how they crunch out. We also have emerging issues. The plan was very silent on carbon neutrality until the city amended it. And then that amendment, of course, applies to the city. It doesn't apply to Coconino County. So there's some reconciliation to do there. There's only two policies in the entire plan that discuss equity, which is a big concern of council and the community at this time. There are new affordable housing strategies in the 10-year housing plan that will need to be considered. There's also the issue of public health, which is a very background issue in the current. And so there are going to be opportunities to talk about our public health, our food systems, what a future pandemic could look like, and how that might affect how we want to be building and conserving our resources. And we'll also talk about emerging technology for transportation, vehicle automation, and electrification of our system for providing transportation are big ongoing issues that may have federal funding or other things that we need to be prepared to respond to. Let me keep going. So with that, I'm ready to work with all of you on this SWOT analysis. And so if you've got if you're a member of the commission voting or non, and you've got the thing pulled up, I'm going to just go over the questions a little. In the first two squares, I want you to evaluate the current plan, not the one we're imagining for the future, for its strengths and weaknesses as it concerns transportation. On the bottom two, and I'll pull that up in a second so everyone can see it, we want to talk about the opportunities that this revision and update provides to the community and the threats to being successful at achieving these goals. So with that, I'll switch over to the SWOT analysis. Was everybody able to get on to it, or does anyone need the QR code or something pulled up so that they can effectively pull up the tool?
I was able to open it, and I entered in my email and it took me to the site with the SWOT with the 4 color boxes. That's where I'm at.
Yep, everybody should be right here.
Yeah, Commissioners Kuhn, Morley, Kraft. Oh, good.
Yep.
All right. So to participate on this platform, all you have to do is go click next to that little plus sign and type in your idea. Once you type in an idea and you hit return, you can edit it. You can also comment on each other's idea, or if you're very visual, you can upload a picture to the comment. So go ahead and start writing your ideas. You don't have to start on any particular quadrant, but when you're done, I'll kind of give you guys 5 minutes to get writing. And when you're done, I will go over some of them. We will then rank them or give them scores. And then after that, I'll show you the results. And as you can see, I can tell if you're typing or not. So everybody dive in. And Julie, if you want Jeff to or any of the staff to participate, they can as well, but it's up to you as the commission chair.
That would be quite helpful because as I see people type things in, it spurs other ideas. So yes, please.
And I'm just going to pull up a little and talk through some of these. I can see we're getting the strengths and weaknesses up here pretty good. So some of the strengths were that it was comprehensive and addressed bike ped transit as standalone categories. If the regional plan does include those future growth areas, so it's thinking ahead. Visions of mode shift hold true per the survey. Oh yes, we have extensive mapping. I'm working on new extensive mapping, but yeah, mapping and GIS technology is heavily leveraged in the plan. For weaknesses, it did not include a Vision Zero goal. Vision Zero was an emerging topic at the time and it wasn't really considered. Does the current plan have too much detail and need to be broken into layers? Can I ask for this one, which I think Bob put in? Which map are you thinking of? The future growth illustration or the transportation maps?
The future growth.
See, so that was me just adding a comment to it. And if you wanted to add a photo, you can do it with the paperclip. You guys can also comment on each other's while we're in this mode. So if somebody sparks an idea and you want to comment on it, keep that conversation rolling. I put in that we never adopted a complete streets policy or incorporated context sensitive solutions. Though we have done that work sometimes, it's not in our code. So what we have in our code currently wouldn't meet the standards of the Complete Streets Institute at all. So how do we use how to do the future growth illustration and not have it serve as a zoning map? Let me make a clarifying statement on that. It's not a zoning map, but
Oh, I know.
But by all state laws, all rezoning requests must conform to the regional plan. So there's some flexibility there and some that is already, the state already decided. So more specific on how to achieve goals and policies. I always like to point out, because that comes up frequently, there was a strategies document associated with the regional plan originally, and the state statute actually says that it should have one. Council at the time chose not to adopt it. They had it removed from the plan because they couldn't come to agreement on what strategies belonged there. So that's a really interesting topic, and one that keep that in mind as we get working on this. There are other new initiatives to be incorporated. Opportunities to be more interactive with digital content. Prioritize our resource protection, so it's a hierarchy. Incorporate affordable housing more centrally. It is a big document. It is. Often in the past, we have sent the regional plan to a special election. Because it's so big, it doesn't fit in an election ballot. And so we've asked people to vote on it as up or down. Special elections are getting more expensive. And so that is a risk reward that council will definitely have to keep in mind as we keep moving forward with this process. People have a concern with density. It sounds good until it happens. I've heard that. Let's see. David, we've got STAR goals. Will you help me expand upon that a little so we make sure we understand it when we walk away?
It was actually supposed to go with the previous statement, like conflicting unprioritized goals. I typed it in and then it went in before I could put that.
Oh, you can edit it. You should be able to just go in and add.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
If you hit the little, if you hit this little pencil, that's the word I'm looking for today. You can add your words back in if you incomplete ones. Yep.
There we go.
We download all this as a spreadsheet, so it really helps when it's there. Is there anything else people are trying to add that we want to talk about, or any of the ones you added that you want to take a second and talk about before we move to ranking them?
Commissioner Morley, transit-oriented development. How was that? Do you know how it's addressed in the current regional plan, or is that something that needs to be embellished or described or added? That's on my mind, because I'm trying to go back and remember that some of the other details, like the land use section of the regional plan and how that's tied to transportation. And it's such a big document. I'm trying to remember. I thought maybe if I could put you on the spot, if you could talk about that, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a good brainstorm, and it brings up our permanent transit network, which was adopted after the regional plan and is meant to guide where transit-oriented development would go from the mountain line perspective. And also in an effort to say, if you need transit, this is where you should locate. We've often found ourselves reactive to development, and then the public asking us to serve, a use that needs transit that has moved off of a transit line. And, that obviously impacts our funding and our ability to do that. So we would love a conversation about people trying to locate on transit rather than expanding transit from the affordability of the transit systems perspective. It's hard in a town where property is limited and expensive, but that would be ideal.
I added to the opportunities list that the revisions opportunity to update it so it includes the permanent transit network. Is there anything else from NAPTA's or from Mountain Lines Planning, Kate, that you think is an opportunity to update for? Because you guys do a lot of planning on your own. So does Metro Plan. Not all on your own, but it's your plans. And their relationship with city documents can be interesting at times.
Yeah, we're updating our 5-year plan. In fact, I think it's next on the agenda tonight. So maybe if I don't know if Sarah, if we have opportunity to go back in as people are triggered about potential overlap between the plans tonight, if they could still come in and update these, or if it's kind of closed once this agenda item ends.
Yeah, unfortunately, this would close with the agenda item, but people can always email me afterwards, like you or Julie could say, here's something we discussed, and provide it in a different way. But because we're doing this in a quorum, it has to be happening on the screen in the meeting.
Got it, thanks.
Great, I don't see anyone else typing. Is this the complete list? Does anybody have anything they wanted to add that's not on here? Otherwise, I'll move us to the rating exercise.
I think we can move to the rating exercise, and I would say, it's a big section, requires a lot of thought. So I think you got some, off the cuff, quick reactions, but there's probably a lot more that the commissioners would want to explore and digest and brainstorm and have more time in the future. But I think this is a good initial start to get us thinking of what's coming.
And we are glad to come back anytime you want, at any point in this process to visit and chat about many of these things. Like I said, we've got 20-something commissions, so we plan to come before you at least once a year throughout the process. But for commissions that are more interested or have things in between they want to talk about, all you have to do is have Jeff request us. We'll be here. So now you are all should move forward. You need to click from brainstorm over to the rate button up here in the, I'm pointing at the screen. I hope I'm not mirrored for anybody, in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to be asked, you get 1 through 10. How important is this opportunity, weakness, or threat? So we're only being asked to rate on importance. So think about that as, we have 508 policies. How would you prioritize the most important ones just at this initial phase? But think of that as well for this. And then what this will do is it will show us the distribution of your rankings. And at the end, it will also show us the rank order of like, this is the most important opportunity, the most important weakness, the most important threat. So you guys can just all start clicking around, and I'm not going to rate any of them. But you'll see there's a little bar that'll show, so I can watch when you guys are done, and I can see if you've gotten all 20 of them rated. You guys did good. 20 brainstorm ideas. Solid start. I should mention, Julie, while people are working on this, that we are going to go tomorrow we'll be at the Mountain Line TAC. And next week, we will be at the Bike and Pet Advisory Commission. So if the Transportation Commission would like a report on all of those, that might be a good reason to come back to your next meeting. Yay, a couple people finished. Good job. John, I see that you ended up offline with this. Did you need help getting back into the link? I just noticed that.
No, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to participate in this or not being official member yet or on the commission officially.
It's up to Julie.
Please feel free to go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Give you guys, if this is open, even if I move forward to the results screens, you can keep adding your material to it. So
Can you explain some of the items? I don't even know what they mean.
well, I didn't write them, so let's see. Which ones do you have questions about?
The bottom one on strengths, vision of mode shift holds true per recent Metro Plan survey.
Well, that's Kate Morley, so she can jump in and explain it.
Yeah, I think Sarah had a slide up that said that in the future, people have a vision that they're biking, walking, and taking transit more. And Metro Plan just did a survey, and it was a similar result that there was a majority of people that saw themselves shifting to these other modes. And so I think I just felt like it was the last vision, and it still feels true moving forward.
Strangely, I still don't understand what that means. So
I just thought it was the strength of the existing plan.
And I should say, you don't have to rank them all. If you see ones you want to skip, that's fine.
I don't want to skip it. I just want to understand it.
Yeah. So what I think it means is that there are people who want to shift from cars to bike, ped, and transit, but they are either uncomfortable or there's a barrier of some kind, like I have a 9-year-old and it's tough to bike around with a 9-year-old on the back of my bike, or trying to bike the distance that she can bicycle. So we have a harder time switching to that mode. But we're able to walk to school because we live close enough to school. So I think those are the kinds of things, or I drive around with a bunch of stuff and I have to do a lot of deliveries and errands all day, and I don't get enough capacity if I have to carry it all on the bus. So those are like barriers to making that mode shift transition. That are part of really Kate and Martin's work in a lot of different ways.
So that's a strength, even though it's a barrier, because it's being identified?
I think Kate was describing it as a strength because that vision was good and it has been true, even though it's going to take work to help make it possible. The plan definitely doesn't like solve problems on its own, but it tells us like where we want to go.
Okay, thank you. I just need to do that with the rest of the regional plan.
Absolutely.
It's a tough assignment because it's there's so much involved, and it's kind of just a off the cuff reaction. David Lemke, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel kind of foolish. I accidentally filled it out, and I realized now it's only meant for the commissioners, correct?
It's fine if staff participated.
Oh, okay, great.
Help.
I just wanted to double check.
Yep, foster ideas. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
So now I'm going to show you the results, even though I know some people are still scoring. Just because I've switched to the results screen has not turned off your ability to keep scoring. But the results show us whether this strength that one person in this group put on the slide is shared. So you can see, like for extensive mapping, some people thought that was a pretty low priority and some people thought it was a higher priority. But it also shows up where there's grouping. So for instance, prioritizing resource protection, having a hierarchy, had a stronger grouping with one outlier who thought it was a lower priority. These average out, and then when we produce them in our report that we get from this, and that we will share with Jeff so he can add it to your minutes for the meeting, you'll see what order they end up in. So right now, the most important weakness that was identified was identifying broader performance measures. And the most important threat was people having a concern with density and addressing that. So the most important opportunity was making sure we get that permanent transit network included. And the most important strength was that it had standalone categories for bike, ped, and transit. So this is your results, and I'm gonna keep going until Nick has had a chance to finish. I'll keep it open. But once these are all rated, I will close this and I'll produce it for your staff report as well. And I can even at the future meeting bring you back this and the other commissions related to transportation, so you can look them all over and we can continue this conversation. So this was a really different way to get your feedback. How did you like it? Or not like it?
Commissioner Morley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think it's really fun, and it's good to see the instant feedback, and in a setting with more time, you could have some really great conversations around it. I don't know how much weight I feel like I can put on it with 5 minutes to brainstorm. I'm sure there's many things I'm missing, but I think it's definitely a good conversation starter.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Like Commissioner Morley said, it'd been nice to have a little bit more time. Because you're doing things and I accidentally hit the enter key, so it wouldn't have finished on a thing. So it's good you can edit after you showed out. So.
Yes, I agree. It's a fun way to get a lot of information in front of you and some pretty quick reactions. So I think it's a great tool, Sarah. Just needs probably more time dedicated to pulling it together to really dive into some of the details. Maybe if it's broken apart, if here's a section of transportation in the regional plan, talking about specific to like one set of goal or one goal and one set of policies under that goal, and doing something like this once you're really into the details. So, Commissioner Kraft, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, there are two things. One is the regional plan is massively overwhelming, and then trying to learn this SWOT system, which I've never seen, heard of, or done before. So it's like I'm just barely getting to understand a little bit of each. So I didn't participate very much because I didn't know what to put in here. And then the prioritizing made sense to me, but it's just kind of like being hit by a tidal wave and not knowing what to do. So yeah, great fun.
And I actually see that Commissioner Spice has joined us, and I didn't see you join, but welcome, Derek, and go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner, Chairwoman, and it's a great tool, but it seems like maybe a homework type thing to really digest all those items. So maybe between now and the next meeting would be an effective time frame. As someone mentioned, the regional plan is a massive document, so more time to put thought into those items. But a great tool, and thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to fill it out. And we can come back with exercises like this as we go. I think that it's meant to stimulate conversation, but it's not your final opportunity to comment at all. So keep thinking about it, and keep, if you are not already on our email list for the regional plan update, we encourage you to visit our website, which I will put in the chat, and to sign up to get the newsletters.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. And is this the end of our regional plan presentation, or do you have more information that you want to cover with the commission?
That's it for tonight, but we'd be happy to come back anytime you like.
Okay, well, thank you. And like to do a call for public comment. Do we have any members of the public that would like to talk about this item on the agenda or have a question? Now would be the time. Right, I don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat, so I think we're good. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
All right, let's move to item C on our agenda. This is Mountain Lions Flagstaff in motion. And I would like to welcome, hey, Busy Collins. Welcome, Busy. Thank you for being here at Commission. And I'm excited to hear what you have to share. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Transportation Commission. I am Busy Collins, Transit Planner for Mountain Line. I'm going to start sharing my screen with a presentation. And when I talked to you all last in October, this Flagstaff in Motion 5-year transit plan was just getting kicked off. So I'm really excited to be coming back to you with some new information. I do have about 25 slides. I know you have a full agenda. I'm just really hoping to get some information in front of this commission at this time. I welcome any follow-up email or discussion. In case we don't have time for questions, I welcome that. And I do have my email at the end, but I'll just jump right in. So Flagstaff in Motion is our 5-year transit plan. And the objective of this plan is to identify the best way to provide and fund Mountain Line transit services. Oops-a-daisy. And so today I just want to talk a high-level overview about the plan and the status. Talk about the needs assessment, which we did complete end of last year, and then talk about the range of improvements and scenarios that we're currently looking at. And here is our project status. So many stages. We're about halfway through, as you can see via the green check marks. And there's a lot to be done still, I will say. So looking forward to getting some more information out on our website, flagstaffinmotion.com, and get an opportunity for our public to start reviewing and give some more feedback. And here's a summary of the needs assessment. So I'm going to start with what we heard from the public. We did have a variety of public involvement strategies. We really wanted to focus on Title VI engagement, so populations who are most vulnerable in our community. And Title VI is just low income and minority populations. And this is a umbrella term, used by Federal Transit Administration, among some other federal agencies, but really making sure that we are supporting our most vulnerable in the communities and making sure that we get to them. They know about this plan. They have opportunities to provide feedback. And those included survey by text, project phone lines, some in-person pop-up events. We put posters all over town. We also mailed postcards to all Title VI populations in our area, which is about half of the population, directing them to the website to get some more feedback. And in addition to that, we do have a citizen advisory committee, which are representatives in the community, very much leaders on a variety of topics. So we have healthcare, we have school representatives, some human service agencies, and among others. So the Transportation Commission, your chair is part of our citizen advisory committee. So really deeply engaged individuals that can provide some incredible feedback for this process. And so here's the high level overview, and then I'm going to go through some graphs to show you exactly what people said per these comments. So what we heard from the public, people really want expanded coverage outside the city. That definitely does not surprise anybody at Mountain Line. We hear that very regularly. We also heard that people want reduced wait times for the next bus. The more frequent a bus can arrive at a bus stop, the easier it is for people to use transit. They don't have to think about the schedule. They can just get to the bus stop, and next bus is going to be right there. Another public feedback item was improved connectivity between routes. So our routes are a hub and pulse. So we have connection centers where routes come in and then they go out into the community and then they come back in. And if you need to cross east of town to west of town, you will need to transfer most likely between routes. So making sure that those routes connected really well. Increasing span of service was another top priority. We want more, higher span of service during weekdays, during the weekends, and absolutely looking at the workforce trips on those earlier and later shift times, the third shift workers, people ending their jobs after transit is already done for the night, which is somewhere between 9 and 11, depending on the route. On weekdays and even earlier on weekends, somewhere between 7 and 8 p.m. on weekends. So it really becomes, you can see why the span of service is important. And then convenient access to transit, more bus stops closer together, roadway improvements, bus stop amenities. I mean, it's the full gamut. We heard all over the place, but I think these are really great messages. And so the one word exercise was really, it comes back to that last slide: expanded, extensive, accessible. I think that's a great message for us to take and integrate into these improvements. And here's a graph of comment themes. So again, bus service coverage, #1 priority, followed by increased span of service and frequency, among many others. And where our routes have very different service levels. So you can see here, Route 66 was #1 priority to have higher frequency or having buses arrive more often. That route is currently 30 minutes on weekdays and an hour on the weekends. So again, you can see how that's really challenging for people to use that as a travel mode if it's so infrequent. Route 5 is our lowest frequency. It arrives once an hour, weekdays and weekends. So that's a no-brainer as well. And you can see some other routes here. And here is the expanded coverage. Where do you want expanded coverage? So we saw, outside of Flagstaff city limits, the airport, which also includes the new hospital, so it gets a little muddied there, I apologize. South of I-40, our Ponderosa Trails neighborhood, the University Heights, major employment centers, West Route 66, Schweitzer Canyon, East Flagstaff, a lot of places that we currently don't serve within city limits, in addition to outside of city limits. And suggested improvements, #1, more bus stops and bus stops closer together, followed by bicycle safety, pedestrian safety. So you can see that most transit trips begin on foot or on bike, and you can see that people are making that connection here. I can't get to a bus stop if I can't walk there or bike there. Bus stops don't exist right outside of our house for most people, right? So we need to make sure that we can provide access to those bus stops. And then we also conducted a technical analysis. So we identified an equity component. So taking in some of these populations, senior populations, zero-car household populations, and prioritizing neighborhoods and routes according to that equity component. And then we also identified population and employment density, because this is the #1 recipe, or rather ingredient, for a high ridership recipe. If you can put transit where density is high, where there's a lot of people that live there or a lot of jobs for people to go to, then you're going to have great ridership. And the colors on that map on the right, you can see that the more it gets to purple, the more it's balancing both population and employment. Red is population, blue is employment. So you can see the deeper the color, the more dense it is. So that's a great way for us to prioritize, again, where improvements make sense. I will also mention that major employers was an important component, and major destinations, which aren't always in those dense areas. Gore and Associates, we have one on East Flagstaff and then one out west of town, so where we don't currently have transit. So making sure that we're understanding employers' needs and supporting our workforce was a big goal for this project. And there's also future growth, things that Sarah is currently working on, Dave Wessel is working on. So taking those findings and putting them into this plan is really important. So that's the map on the left, and then the map on the right is the future Northern Arizona healthcare facility. So making sure that the regional hospital in the area has transit service is critical. So making sure that we incorporate that into our plan. And so we combined all those routes and neighborhoods into a prioritized list, and then we screened that list to arrive at needs. We really wanted to understand if there is adequate transit service or access, then maybe that area doesn't need to be prioritized or doesn't need additional improvements. If there's operational issues on the current routes, we have a few routes that have trouble with on-time performance. We want to make sure that we provide transit service that is reliable, that people can arrive on time to their locations, and that's important. So we need to solve those. And then we also have electric buses coming online, and those require charging. So making sure that we have the charging accommodated in all of our routes. And so here's an example of that screening on top. Here's a route, Route 66, and then there's also an area, West Route 66. And so really identifying what the problem is, and then the full universe of options of how we address that problem, what really makes sense. And these improvement categories really come down to either new routes or adjustments to current routes, frequency and service hours, microtransit zones, and capital improvements. And I'm just going to briefly describe microtransit. Mountain Line currently has a microtransit pilot. It's an on-demand, flexible, hailed service. It's like a taxi service that is provided with our smaller buses. And so somebody can either call up or use an app on their phone, get picked up with that microtransit service. And this service is very much meant to support transit, not create duplication. So we would define where rides could go. Typically microtransit, as you'll see on future maps here in a minute, it's a coverage solution. So having a way that people that don't have transit in an area, a neighborhood, can connect into the transit system is what microtransit's about. And then capital improvements, that could be bus stops, ped bike, a variety of things that you'll see here shortly. And then we package these improvements into 3 scenarios, and I'll say that it's very much the kitchen sink. So this is how it broke down. Very much I was hoping to include all of the possible improvements into one of these 3 scenarios to evaluate how effective that improvement is to reach our goals. So now I'm going to show you 3 maps, and there's a lot of information. I just want you to understand the range of options. Staff is working to refine all of these improvements. And the next time I see you, I will have a recommended scenario. So just wanted you to understand the range of improvements. So first I want to note that the hospital route, which is indicated in burgundy here, goes down to that new hospital location. And there is a hospital route on every scenario because we do think that is a baseline condition for the future. And yeah, so then there's here in this scenario, we do have a few new routes. So there's a Ponderosa Trails and airport route. We're extending Route 8 to Woody Mountain in this scenario. Woody Mountain Road. We have 3 microtransit zones indicated by the circles, and also a late night microtransit option, Friday and Saturday. So seeing how that might work to help. And this microtransit would very much, because there would not be transit service. Yeah, I apologize. So there's some microtransit can absolutely be an entire zone. It can also feed into transit if transit is operating. So transit may or may not operate with that 3/4 mile microtransit zone, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. And the frequency and service hours. So could we have a few routes suggested here, 2, 3, 10, and 66 provide service until 1 a.m. Could we increase Saturday weekday frequency and span, that it matches a weekday, right? So Saturday is currently a weekend, but could it have increased frequency and span according to our weekday level service? We also identified a few routes with improved frequency. And then the last item I'm going to mention on this map is capital improvements. We're really looking at a phased implementation of sorts for those areas outside of city limits. So trying to support people who are coming into the city to use transit. And so this kiss and ride location indicated by the stars is that concept. So could we have on the outer edges of town, you can see all 4 directions, people coming in. Could we have an area that somebody driving could drop off a passenger, and that passenger or passengers could use the transit system for the day, and then they would reunite at night and return back home in the car. So that's the concept of the kiss and ride, and perhaps this is a phased approach up to a park and ride. So that's the concept there. The next map here is microtransit focus. So we have just a few routes, new routes. Again, the hospital route, this iteration is showing it go to the hospital and then to the airport, but really solving the coverage requests from the public with microtransit, feeding into the transit service indicated by the various colored lines. And so there you can see a wide variety of microtransit locations here. And then the frequency service hours, could we have Saturday just match weekday frequency, but not the span? That's that option listed there. And then this is my final map. And this is the true kitchen sink. So you can see in the smaller map on the bottom right that we are proposing in this scenario commuter level service, so morning and afternoon, following those peak travel times, going out to our neighboring communities and then feeding into transit. And you can see a little bit the deep burgundy lines at the edge, kind of feeding into areas where our core transit service currently exists. The hospital improvement in this scenario is a bus rapid transit. So kind of lengthening the previous BRT route that we had proposed down to the hospital. Maybe an express route from the mall to downtown with no stops between would be awesome. We're not sure. So again, we have a ton of new routes identified here. We're really excited to see how all of that rates according to our scoring. And then some capital improvements. So bus stop additions, transit signal priority, which would help buses move through signalized intersections by communicating with those signals, either lengthening a green or changing from red to green quicker. Maybe it's bike ped improvements, maybe it's e-bike scooter share. So really just trying to evaluate a lot of different improvements with these scenarios. And the next steps are public involvement, identifying cost estimates for all of these improvements, and then really refining improvements to a single recommended scenario. And that's all I have for you today. I welcome any questions. I actually got through that very quickly and would welcome any questions if you do have them now.
Thank you, Busy. Commissioner Kraft.
Hi, thanks for that. Do you, I guess I'm curious, how do you pay for this? And does this plan help you get funds in terms of things like grants and so on? Does this translate to, funding in a way?
Excellent question. You're right. Plan is only as good as the funding to implement it. So we're really looking to identify within this plan, how do we fund each of these components? And we're looking at how we, could we break certain improvements into a specific funding source, other improvements into another funding source? So that will absolutely be addressed. We're currently analyzing a lot of different opportunities. We're not through that that task yet, and I'm really excited to see the end of it personally. So I'll be back to let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other commissioners, including our two new commissioners, are non-voting. Any questions for Busy or comments on what you've seen? Okay, and Busy, can you remind me what is going to be the process for selection of a preferred scenario? I mean, how really is that going to shake out and then be presented?
So we have evaluation criteria, and I can pull up that slide. I just thought it was good to be too much, but we have a set of 18 different evaluation criteria. Why don't I just share it real fast and you can see it while I'm talking about it. So here's our evaluation criteria. This also includes public input and stakeholder input, not listed here. So we ran each of these improvements and scored them based on the possible points identified here. So making sure transit efficiency, transfer opportunities, that connection that we heard from the public. Healthcare facilities. So are there healthcare facilities nearby? That improvement would score higher because it's more supportive of those facilities. I will also mention that the items in bold are based on our priorities from the board of directors and our citizen advisory committee, really understanding that we want good return on investment. We don't want to just throw buses out there that are empty, that aren't going to be ridden. So we want to make sure to prioritize where our ridership, we can really have that return on investment via ridership. And then we also wanted to support transit dependent populations. Those are the top two goals that we really heard from our board of directors and our citizen advisory committee. And so that does translate right back to the higher points indicated here. So we ran all of those improvements through, we assigned points, and then the highest points, the improvements with the highest points will rise to the top. And we are looking at those first to refine into a preferred scenario. And maybe some don't make sense. Maybe some need a little bit of tweaking, but that's the first step. And we're not through that step yet. But that's the process. And then bringing that to the public, because, you know, the three scenarios I showed you are a lot of information. It's really confusing. So making sure that we have very clear information for the public to consume, to understand, and to provide feedback on. So we're still working through exactly what that looks like, just making sure we have a lot of graphical information, I think is the the term I love to use, but just making sure that it's really easy to understand. Does that answer your question, Chair?
It does. Thank you, Busy. Dave Wessel, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Hello, Busy. Just a question I think may be of interest to me and hopefully interest to the commission. So you're fashioning a recommendation, you're looking at funding. Will you have a series of scenarios based on different levels of funding? No, because I think Commissioner Kraft asked, do you use this to go after funding? Occasionally, these plans are used to go after voter funding. And there's all the conversation about, would you support a 1/4 cent sales tax increase or a 1/2 cent sales tax increase, and associated improvements that you would get with the various levels. So are you planning on something like that? And then the follow-up question is, how far is this plan looking out into the future relative to these different funding pictures? So thanks.
Dave, you asked the hard questions. I got this. Yes, so we absolutely do have scenarios. We will have scenarios based on funding. Right now, we're really looking at what is the minimum amount of funding we need to solve some of our most pressing issues. So that hospital, on-time performance, and electric bus charging, like And then also traffic impacts in the future, which we are looking to 2040 for this plan. I appreciate that question. So how does traffic congestion in the future impact the service we currently provide today? As there's more cars on the road, the bus moves even slower. We're not able to keep our current schedules. We might need to add a bus to resolve that. So that would be our like lowest cost option that we're developing. And then our approach currently is we want to develop a vision. Where do we want to be in 2040? And then that would be our probably most costly option long term, and then phasing that back to today. So how do we implement that? What year marks, milestones would we implement that to get to that 2040 point?
Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Okay, I would like to do a call to public comment. Do we have any members of the public that have a
I
question?
had a question.
Oh yeah, Commissioner Kuhn, go ahead.
Ms. Collins, how extensively are you looking on the outlying areas? You know, because we always, you know, we hear that too over here. You know, why aren't the outlying areas served better?
Excellent question. It really comes down to funding. I would say, gosh, if it was my choice, I would be putting out transit service all over. But I don't have that deep of pockets. So, you know, currently our main funding source is both federal formula funds and the city transit sales tax. And together those fund the majority of our system. We also have fare revenue, we have EcoPass partnerships, we have a couple other smaller sources, but those are our two largest. And the city sales tax was enacted by city residents. So there is a challenge of extending those funds outside of city limits. That's been the thought process in the past, but we continue to hear this need and trying to find a way that we can either support, at least identify phases to support that in, and also how would we pay for that? So those will both come together in this plan. Currently, we don't have those results yet, but you're right, Bob, that's a really important issue. How do we fund it and how seriously are we looking? Because that's, as you saw, our #1 request. So we need to make sure to be transparent in that when we do come to the public on how realistic is this? What would that cost? And how do we fund that?
Thank you.
Any members of the public? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Busy. This is exciting. We'll stay tuned and eager to see how the scenarios start to shake out and what the dollars are that are attached to those scenarios.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Okay, with that, we will move to item D on our agenda. This is Metro Plan's Stride Forward. How exciting. You've got a great response to the initial surveys. I'm just doing a quick time check, Dave. It is 5:20, so we've got till 6. I would say you've got about 30 minutes. Does that work for you? And then we'll leave 10 minutes for to and from commissioners.
That works great, and I'll hustle through this, make sure we're done on time. So thank you for having me.
Yep.
Yep. I'll go ahead and share my screen, get my presentation pulled up for you all. All right, can everybody see my screen okay?
Sure can.
Excellent. And now I'm going to leave it in this format because I'll be taking notes. I don't have anything as cool as Sarah did, so I'm going a little old school. So my purpose here tonight is just to introduce you to our plan, Stride Forward, which is an update to the Regional Transportation Plan. Tonight I'll introduce you to that plan, show you to the work to date, engage you a little bit as stakeholders, and we do consider you as stakeholders, and then tell you what's coming up. A little bit about the plan. It's a 25-year transportation plan. You heard Sarah mention that we cover her plan covers the same areas we do, you know, so Belmont to Winona, Kachina Mountain Air up to north at the peaks, same area that Mountain Line's plan does. We're mandated to look out 20 to 25 years, mandated by the federal government. We're a regional organization with the city, the county, the state, Mountain Line, and NAU. And we tie together all of these plans and coordinate federal transportation planning and construction funds in the region. So we really want to look at strategies and project options with clear costs and implications, really kind of trying to drill down on economic development and relations to environmental objectives, particularly climate action, as you heard Sarah Dector mention. We have a modest vision for our organization to develop the finest transportation system in the country. So you guys need to get busy and help us on that. And I'll be asking a question on this score here in a little bit. So we're looking to help define that. And we really do want to integrate these multiple plans and policies. You've heard about, 3 of them tonight, and that's most of them. And then this stakeholder outreach, along with online surveys and other efforts, are part of our public participation effort. So we are kind of swimming in this planning soup, and you guys are swimming in it deeper and stronger than most, because you're hearing about all 3 of these on the same night. Flagstaff in motion, you just heard, the regional plan, you just heard, there were references to the active transportation master plan. We've heard about the carbon neutrality plan. We're trying to make sure we're addressing all of those things together. I will mention, since you just heard about Flagstaff in motion, that these plans really need to be in lockstep with each other and closely coordinated. We sign off on those federal funds that come in and help with transit. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to share all of our public participation so that we can gain greater insights. We know who we're all talking to, and hopefully aren't asking you all the same questions. So we're trying to lower the impact on you guys. We've been at this since June. The first task there is project management. The second task is some literature review and socioeconomic trends. Those are done. Task 3 is the existing base year regional transportation model that we use to analyze transportation. That's fairly well done. And now we're really to the meat of the study, which are our scenario planning. And we're going to do an existing land use plan. You saw Sarah flash that map for you. And then we're going to do what we call an enhanced sustainability plan. Those are onward and upward, respectively. Task 5 is our public engagement. 6 is the policy plan, and 7 is an accessibility study. And as we complete this, we think it'll be of interest to everybody. It will look at looking at like a residential area and its access to pharmacies or groceries or medical offices or schools by walking, biking, transit, and automobile, and looking at it in like 5, 10, 15, 20-minute trips, and then looking how equitable that accessibility is across the region. And I think that's going to help us a lot with our transportation planning as well as land use planning. As I mentioned, we're doing 2 scenarios, onward and upward. Onward is looking at the current land use plan and really looking at propositions 419 and 420 as they were approved by the voters, with some modifications to make them a little more sustainable. You've heard all about the Lone Tree Overpass and the efforts that are going on there. We're using that as kind of guidance to how far we could tweak these without crossing a line in terms of voter expectation. And then we'll report out across a variety of metrics and how that plan would do towards reaching our goals. The second plan is upward, and really looking at this in a much more ambitious way, and where in the previous scenario, we really need to be fiscally constrained for federal requirements. Here, we're able to take those shackles off and really, to use Ms. Collins' phrase, throw everything in the kitchen sink at trying to reach particularly those carbon neutrality goals. And we'll also look at the effects on other community ambitions. So we'll introduce new transportation projects. We'll blow transit out the roof, maybe employing a lot of those kitchen sink ideas from the exercise that Mountain Line's going through. We'll look at various density patterns to try to decrease trip lengths and increase modal options or modal utilization. And this is really going to be, for this round of the RTP, or the Regional Transportation Plan, this is really going to be more of an educational piece back to the decision makers and the public, and informing that regional plan process to see, well, what looks like it's going to work, what looks like it's perhaps not as effective, how far do we need to go with some of these policies, and hopefully that'll, and like I said, inform that process. As I mentioned, we see you guys as important stakeholders. Like Sarah Dechter will be back. We intend to speak with you more than once through this process. And here's our first question as I fly through this rather quickly. As I said, we're trying to establish the finest transportation system in the country. This is, kind of a softball question to put to the commissioners, but in terms of your travels around the country or around the globe, what's the finest transportation system you experienced? And this could be either an entire system, or maybe it's just a component like the trails, or something like the Autobahn in Germany, or a rail system somewhere. So just take a few minutes. I'll be typing while you talk, and Madam Chair, I'll look to you to kind of call on people as they look to engage.
Absolutely. Feel free to put it in the chat too, commissioners or soon to be commissioners, city staff. If something comes to mind, fire it off in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on you. Commissioner Kraft, I see.
Yeah, I would say Scandinavia, in particular Copenhagen, had incredible mixed transportation system, and you could get where you needed to go. I liked the light rail in Portland, but it only went on its lines, and to get to somewhere off of them required a lot of effort.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morley and then Commissioner Spice.
Commissioner Kraft stole my answer. I was going to say Copenhagen, and specifically, I mean, the biking, I was blown away. Bike parking lots that are like Walmart parking lots, and they were full. People, with 4 kids on the bike with them. It was really impressive that with the way they'd embrace that as a transportation mode.
Sorry about that.
I'll be glad when we're back in person. That might be part of my two from. We won't we won't talk about that now, but Commissioner Spice, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to mention, I spent many winters in Park City, Utah, and they had a core area where the bus was a free service. And of course, that was funded by the visitation to Park City, but that really encouraged people to use it and not park downtown. Just a thought, if that's realistic. But just to mention, I'm from Baltimore City, and I kind of moved here. One reason was the trail system, which I do find incredible, and it's somewhat unmatched, I think. But I just wanted to give compliments to the FUTS trail system, and I know it's planned to be expanded, but I would give Flagstaff a big thumbs up in that category.
Great, thanks.
Joe Koenig, go ahead.
I lived in New York City for a couple of years during college, and their subway system is really remarkable for the ability to get around so many places in a covered, reliable, consistent space. And I would second a lot of the European places. I've been over there and been able to, fly into the airport, take a train somewhere, not have to rent a car, ride bikes around. And yeah, as a whole system, it's been pretty cohesive.
Right. Any others? Fire them off. Commissioner Morley.
I just want to make an observation that we've all said the finest transportation systems are places doing great multimodal. None of us said the amazing highway network in Phoenix. So.
And I would add that Mountain Line has done an outstanding job in Flagstaff, given our population, our climate, just the way our city is laid out, our geography. And it's exciting to see scenarios where we talk about expansion and new services.
All right, well, those are some great inputs. If there's no more, I'll look to the chat later to bring those into the slide here. I'll continue on. But thank you for that input. Want to direct your attention to places where you can get more information and some of the things that we're doing. This is our website, metroplanflg.org. And you can go to /strideforward, where you'll have access to more information on the plan, as well as products as they come out. Some of the products that are there now is a literature review that looks at methods of reducing vehicle miles of travel. We have a socioeconomic profile that's up there now, and the results of our first random sample, or of our random sample survey that was done late last year, and soon we'll have the results of the online survey that was just completed. So just a little taste of that literature review. This is the summary slide. I think you've all seen it, but there's more details on each of these in tabular format within that literature review. You'll also find information on possible changes in travel behavior, long-term changes due to COVID, as well as some performance metrics that we're looking at. For survey, we have asked questions. I think this is what Commissioner Morley was referring to. We asked questions: how do you get around today? How would you like to get around in the future, 10 years from now? And you can see a sizable shift away from cars into walking, biking, and transit. And we'll be looking at that in terms of our two scenarios and how that shift compares, as well as looking at some of those VMT reduction strategies, incentives to get people to shift, and whether or not those are large enough to actually achieve our goals. And those goals are fairly significant. We're looking at climate change. Transportation is 40% of greenhouse emissions for this region, so very important to Metro Plan. You heard Sarah mention housing affordability. Can transportation, well delivered, reduce the need for a car or that second car? Can it help support more affordable housing types in terms of the density? And another issue, again, you're hearing this about equity. You saw the map that Mountain Line has put together relative to this. This is kind of similar that we'll be doing. And as I mentioned, that accessibility study will take some of these areas where there's an overlap of many kind of risk conditions, poverty, lack of vehicles, disability, elderly, and look at their ability to get to those services like pharmacies, groceries, by the different modes, and see if that's equitably distributed. So here's the next question for you all, and it's a question about questions. You know, we're just now getting into our scenarios and really starting to dig into things. And so the question to you is, as we go through this process, what questions can we answer? What's really on your mind that you'd like us to try to dig into and perhaps resolve, or at least show options for resolution as we go through? So, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you to direct the conversation. Yeah, all of a sudden, I'm not hearing anything all of a sudden.
Julie, you're muted. There you go.
Ah.
Once every meeting, got to do it. So I see Commissioner Spice's hand up and Joe Koenig's hand up. Is that, I'm going to call on you unless it's left over from last time. All right, so we'll start with Commissioner Kraft, and then I know Councilmember Shimoni has a comment or question. So Commissioner Kraft.
Excuse me.
So I have an easy one for you, is how to get entrenched automobile drivers to move to other modes of transit.
Okay. Thank you.
And I hope you're just going to answer them now.
Was not really my intent. If we have some time, I might circle back to those. So right now, I just want to collect the questions.
All righty.
Okay. And Councilmember Shimoni, do you have a question on this, or do you want us to go through the questions and then you can do your comment?
My question actually ties directly into this question, so maybe it is appropriate now. Hi, Dave. Thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate this conversation. You know, it's funny, I'm just getting home, and just to make the group proud, I hauled my groceries home and just unloaded everything off my bicycle. But I do recognize that I am in the 1% that's willing to ride on the road in these current conditions. And, you know, to Commissioner Kraft's comment, you know, I think a lot of times we're using the word safety in terms of a metrics that we're concerned about. But my understanding from talking to engineers, and Dave in Chair Lead, correct me if I'm wrong, but our streets are technically safe. It's really levels of comfort that bikes and pedestrians feel. And so it's really, I think, what we should be, the verbiage we should be using is comfort, because technically a lot of things we do is safe, but it's not comfortable, and it does result in crashes. But we don't take responsibility for that as engineers and planners, is my understanding. But my question for you, Dave, that ties directly into this question that you don't have to answer now, but I am curious, you know, is given the public movement towards alternatives and to get away from car travel, and assuming we're able to implement safe and comfortable corridors, to Commissioner Kraft's comment or question, how does that affect our modeling? You know, when we predict out 20 years and we feel very comfortable in our predictions of how culture is going to act, will this shift our Metro Plan's predictions? And I guess you don't have to answer that now, but that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Kuhn. Can't hear you.
Sorry, my question is very similar. How do you model neighborhoods that are friendly? That you're able, you know, the hospital is being built now out there. How do we build a regional stuff so you don't have to travel? You know, we can have regional schools, but you need regional support other ways. And you know,
can I ask friendly?
You don't become that Phoenix where you got to go to across from Glendale to Mesa to do something.
Are you talking about bike and walk friendly neighborhoods or highly accessible neighborhoods?
Highly accessible neighborhoods that you can walk. You know, I live off Elk Run. It's still scary. They drive 50 miles an hour on Elk Run, and there's no sidewalks. And you can tell, they can say, no, you don't. Yeah, they do. You know, but and what you do is you gotta, and I walk on it, but like you say, you gotta feel comfortable.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morley.
Yeah, I think two things really. One being related to what Commissioner Kuhn was just saying, like can we educate the public about the tie between density and transportation, where we're seeing a lot of density in this town shot down on the argument of congestion, when really, that's the better path forward from a congestion perspective over sprawl. And then the second one being performance measure based again, and this being the idea of, if everything we invest in as taxpayers should serve multiple purposes, what other purposes or performance measures should we look at for our streets and roads in terms of, serving climate action, providing shade, landscaping, character? I think when Sarah Dechter pulled up the regional plan, there were lots of pieces about, performance measures simply related to the movement of cars, which it is, but our streets do so much more than move cars. So how do we incorporate those into our planning and decision-making processes?
Okay, thank you. Good questions.
Joe Koenig.
Thanks, Madam Commissioner, Chair. I guess mine is maybe more of a question for the process, seems other questions, but it is how to ensure input from those that don't respond. So I think like a lot of times we use these surveys, which are great and they can be very, very empowering for certain people, but it's still a small snippet, and we want to make sure that we hear everybody's voices, not just those that respond.
So is that both what some people might call the silent majority as well as the underrepresented?
I think to me, it's people who don't think they have enough of a voice in the system, or they don't think the system really, they don't understand how it works, and so they don't see value in doing this. I wouldn't want to put that in either the silent majority or the underrepresented minority. I think there are people in both of those groups that don't necessarily respond for their own reasons.
Those are all great questions. Maybe oh, you got one there?
I do. Just one more. And that is establishing a hierarchy for our street network. So Sarah talked about arterials, collectors, local streets, and what those mean and what those serve. As we talk about, shifting to bike, pedestrian, transit, and we still have regional vehicular travel that's going to occur, where do we want that to happen? And being able to be clear about the hierarchy of our system and those priorities.
Great. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Maybe I'll answer a couple quick questions. Quick questions. I'll take this one off because I was just being a smart aleck in terms of Councilmember Shimoni grocery shopping from his bike. Relative to the model, there's some things that we can do and some things that we can't. And for those that we can't, we'll do our best to make reasoned judgments kind of post-model. So, the model can assess the effect of density and mixes. It connects, productions from homes to attractions like shopping and work. And so the closer those are, it will tend to assign more trips, based on national and local data to those other modes, assuming there's a good network there. So we can develop and model those networks and model that proximity, change the proximity between uses, and get those effects. As far as comfort and stress, those are some of the things that we really don't model particularly well. We do have some of those in the model to suggest where people would go, but not necessarily how much it would influence their use. So that would be some of the things that we would look at to increase post-model the effects that we think we'd see as a result of reducing stress for either walking or biking. One of the things that we often do is, as we look at accommodating various items, we'll increase the cost accordingly. So if we go from a 6-foot sidewalk to a 14-foot foots trail, that's both cost and materials as construction and right of way. So we'll try to account for those things as we layer them in. The switching from incentivizing people shifting modes. Again, I'd direct you to the literature review in terms of some of the things that are available there. And it also talks about the level of shift that those might inspire. We're also doing some look into things that are happening in Europe, because a lot of that research in our literature review or most of it, if not all of it, is North American or American based. And we may need to look beyond that. So those are answers to some of those questions. As far as the outreach is concerned, that's a challenge in terms of getting people engaged. One of the things that we do, I mentioned the random sample survey. Those aren't perfect, but they are kind of a ground truth in terms of hearing from a random sample of people, including maybe those that might not otherwise participate. Granted, if you don't think your voice matters, you might refuse to participate in a random sample survey. So do our best to get the word out, coordinate with our partners in that planning soup, so we can use input that we hear from all these different sources to develop as complete a picture as we can of the constituents we serve. So wrapping up, as I mentioned, we've got our kind of base year of 2019 that's pre-COVID, as well as when we have our last good set of traffic counts. So we're going to do a performance report for that across a variety of metrics. We'll be doing our onward scenario. We're wrapping up the projections on that, and we'll be putting them into that current land use. We will relocate the hospital. So that will be a change from the current forecasted or future growth illustration. We will assume that the hospital is relocating and make adjustments accordingly. Website, the online survey are done. We'll be launching another one here in a couple of weeks, and we're continuing with our stakeholder outreach. We're kind of wrapping up round one and expect to come out again after that scenario analysis is done. We might send out an online survey to our stakeholders and would ask staff like Jeff Bauman to make sure that the commissioners he serves have access to that survey, and hopefully you guys can respond to that. So that is my presentation for you tonight. We're really excited about this effort. It's kind of professionally, it's very challenging, and I think from a community values and needs, it's really important. So we're really excited to be part of this and have you come along with us. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Dave. Commissioner Kraft.
Yeah, I was just curious if you have a path to get, because it seemed like the upward was the brainstorming part and the onward is the real reality. Do you have a path for getting the brainstorming items matured and onto the onward list?
That's a great question. I think that the short answer is no. And the reason for that is, you were part of the Transportation Tax Commission. There's a lot of work to be done to identify local funding sources. Those local funding sources are often needed to match federal grants. Now, there are some federal grants out there that we could match against the Proposition 419 funds, and we can identify some of those, certainly. Some of the other stuff, like any land use changes, I guess I could say we have a path forward, but that path forward is to hand over the stick to the regional plan process to say, here's where we see land use changes really being effective and the patterns that you might want to consider in your scenarios and your considerations. But that's the process that's going to set the policy that then will drive, the next true round of transportation improvements. So we've got the onward, stay the course. Here's what we're funded to do and our land use plan to do it. We'll modify that in the upward scenario, and if that becomes the law of the land or some variation of it, we'll be right back to look at the transportation system that best serves it, and we'll actually be part of that regional plan process to help adopt or develop that transportation system. But again, this is kind of an informative process for this iteration of the regional transportation plan.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioners, future commissioners, any comments or final questions for Mr. Wessel? All right, Dave, thank you for being here and presenting. How can we help? Share the link, tell our friends, visit the site.
Yep, all of the above. There will be times, as I mentioned, we'll send out surveys that we just want stakeholders engaged in. There will be times when we, like this next online survey, we'd love to get over 600 responses for every online survey we do. I think everybody would. We really kind of knocked it out of the park this time. And so when we have that, and we'll engage the stakeholders, and then we really want you to get the word out. If you've got mailing lists through work or, through your softball league or whatever it might be, we'd really like to drive as many people as possible. And I think that gets to the comment about, are we hearing from people who aren't normally heard from? And to the degree that we can parse that out through our demographic questions or our geographic questions, we can zero in and highlight some of those.
Excellent. Dave, do we have any members of the public that want to speak on this item? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Dave. Have a good meeting. Have a good evening, and let's move on to old business.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no old business, so we're going to move on to item 4, which is concluding general business. We have reports from the BAC and the PAC. There are links provided. You're welcome to visit those links, commissioners, to get a report out. Jeff, is there anything in particular that you would like us to know about specific to PAC, BAC?
Thank you. Martin's here as well if he wants to jump in, but just a reminder that there is no Bicycle Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow night as usual. They are combined next week on Thursday. And I don't have any highlights for that agenda yet, but I did just see it came out today. So
Right. Thank you for that.
sure.
All right. Moving to item B, informational items 2 from commissioners and staff. I will start, and based on the council meeting last night, it sounds like city is going to masks optional, and they're lightening some of the restrictions at City Hall. And I wondered if there was any plan or conversation for commissions and committees to have in person and virtual as an option for certain individuals that would still prefer to have it virtual.
Thank you. I can jump in here. You're correct. They, I think, are following CDC guidelines, and Coconino County is a moderate, the middle category at the current time. So yeah, as of Monday, things will be opening up at City Hall without mask requirements, mask optional, that kind of thing. The boards and commissions being virtual is a different set of criteria. It has to do with our reopening plan. And I believe last night they said they would like to talk about that in the future. I don't remember if they picked a date, but that CDC guidance did not change anything as far as our commission status. So I'll keep you all informed, and when that changes, so I would expect that to change in the next month or two, but as of now, it has not changed.
Okay, thank you. And commissioner updates, Commissioner Morley.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to let the commission know that as of yesterday, we launched a microtransit pilot service to and from Flagstaff Airport. You can go door to door from your house to the airport and back for $2. So check it out. It's a grant funded program. It only goes through June 30th, but we're excited to try it. And then I just wanted to make the general comment that I'm really excited for us to have these big planning discussions tonight. I think it was really good, and I'm excited for the commission to be engaging in the forward thinking of the transportation system.
Excellent. Thank you. I was pretty excited about this special meeting that we could be talking about these big transportation planning projects. Any other commissioners discussion? Otherwise, I have one last item. All right. Commissioner Kuhn, you've got your hand up. I don't know if it's for this or leftover.
It's leftover. I'll drop it.
That's okay. All right. So my last item is to wish Derek the absolute best. Commissioner Derek Spice. This is his last meeting with us, and I know that I've only known you for about, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. I've been on commission, and it's been a pleasure serving with you. I'm going to miss you, but wanted to give you an opportunity to, if you have anything that you want to share with the group, but really appreciate you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It has been an absolute pleasure, and such great dialogue with a motivated group of dedicated folks, and look forward to being involved in the future. And thank you so much. And Madam Chair, you're a true leader, and you've evolved the commission in an excellent manner. So keep up the good work, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll miss you. Round of applause. All right. So with that, let's move to item B2, Boulder Point University Avenue update.
What do you think?
All right. I tried to switch my screen over real quick, and thank you, Derek. I didn't get to say that publicly either. Thank you, Derek. You may have the longest run ever of a transportation commissioner. Not sure anyone will beat this. Derek was appointed in February of 2012. So partial term and a couple of full terms and a little bit of extra at the end there. So congratulations. I don't think that will ever be topped. Boulder Point, as we have discussed a couple of times, just keeps evolving a bit. So on the screen, you should see the latest temporary traffic calming setup. So the top is kind of the drawing that helped the streets crew lay this out, and then the bottom picture is it actually in place. So we've converted what was some center island median using my cursor to a fairly traditional mini circle, except it's not a traditional mini circle because it's a T intersection. So you have a lot of good deflection and slowing for inbound vehicles or westbound, but eastbound as they exit the neighborhood, there's not much deflection. And we don't really have a way to make this bigger without impacting the bike lane, which we've heard pretty clearly people don't want to share the lane there in that situation. So maybe some other options to provide some deflection here, but I've been out and watched it a bit, working really well westbound, but not probably so great eastbound. That we don't have any measurements yet, so we'll get some measurements when the pavement cleans up from the latest snow. But that's the quick update on Boulder Point. And I guess two other updates. I spent a couple of hours out there 2 mornings ago with a resident that we've heard from in the past who want to just talk about it some more and talk about the process going forward. And then I know we have a small group going out, I think in 2 weeks with the city manager's office to meet with another neighbor. So there's lots of activity out there. People just trying to understand what's happening and what the future will be. So I'll keep you all informed as that progresses, but we have the direction we need. Just wanted to give a quick update on what we're doing out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
Any questions from commissioners for Jeff about it? All right. Moving on to item C, our next meeting scheduled for April 6th. We've got a tentative agenda list of items that Jeff and I will be working on and presenting to you and posting. And with that, I think it concludes our meeting. Only 2 minutes over, so working on it. But thank you all for your time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye. I said aye.
Okay. I think I got it all. All right. Thank you all. Have a
Thanks,
safe-
Derek. Good luck.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek. Good night.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Good night
Thanks.
now.
Oh.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hernandez.